Good afternoon, everybody. This is Dr. Search, and welcome to another episode of Search for the Truth. Today, I'm really excited to have this following guest, Professor Brian. I'm excited because I read his book a long time ago, and I was blown away by the science and the content, how controversial it was. And we're going to talk a little bit about this today. So, Professor Brian, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me. Delighted.
Thank you. So you wrote a book. Let me show to the listener the book. One of the books that really inspired me to do nutrition is The Hidden Story of Cancer, right?
Yes.
Was it your first book?
No.
Okay. So I know you have multiple books that you wrote, and yeah.
One.
So, but that book specifically was really exciting because it goes over the science of cancer, and we're going to talk a little bit about it because it did ruffle some feather in the field of nutrition and holistic healing and the content of it. I know you're really big about science, and this is really what I like because I am a scientist and I like to read the references that people refer to, right? So if you guys have any questions, please write it in the comment section so I can ask my guests your questions. So first of all, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what is your goal? What are you trying to do with your work?
Sure. I'm an electrical engineer by training, MIT, so I'm very used to analyzing sophisticated systems. So what I did, my wife became diabetic, doing everything right years ago, type 1 in her 30s. And it was, Brian, why the heck did this happen? And I started researching. Luckily, I live in Houston, and we have one of the top 10 medical libraries in the world. MD Anderson was kind enough to let me use their medical library, the Jesse Jones Library. So I spent years there, and there are books going back to 1850. I actually had my hand on a copy of the Lancet, which is the world's premier medical journal. So after many years, it was, my goodness, we're being told this, and the answer's over here. People are getting misled. So my charter was really to start getting the truth out from a strictly scientific basis. I had no preconceived notions. It's okay to guess in science, by the way. You can go, I'm testing this. I like this. It meets criteria for being right for a couple different reasons. But you have to be honest. If it doesn't pan out, you have to change. So I follow the science. I don't have a preconceived notion about where it should go. And most people want their pet theory to be right. And even Richard Feynman, Nobel Prize winner, would say, you're the easiest one to be fooled. But if contradictory evidence shows you are obligated to give this, and nobody does that today. It's horrible. You have people all over the internet, some very big people, one in particular slamming omega-6 and vegetable oils, and he misses one word, adulterated omega-6, because it's all processed. So we'll be talking about that. But the reason I got into the field was because it was personal. Just like you had a child with cancer, I had a wife with diabetes, and she's a pharmacist, so she's in the medical field, and no idea why this happened. And actually, the doctor's recommendations, Whitaker Institute in California, made her worse with the high carbohydrate, high fiber, stuff that was just wrong. So we'll talk about whatever you want to, but that's what got me into this.
Okay, and you have a good point here because I used to work in science. I was a PhD, right? I'm a PhD, so I was trained to be a scientist. And today, scientists change the science to fit their own preconceptions or perspective of what they want to know or what they believe the truth is. You have the other way around approach is you look at the science, and I'm sure you change your opinions over the years about different things.
Luckily, I was right in the beginning, and everything I've come across confirms that. But I started at the center of a circle, so anywhere you go on the circumference will be right. What other people do is they try and hit the circumference and go back, and you can't do that. So I guessed very early on, cancer crosses all socioeconomic conditions. So what thing applies to that? Food. Because I don't care how much money you have or what your education is, we're eating food. Now you can go, I go to very expensive restaurants, so you may think you're getting better food, and in some cases you are, but in a lot of cases where it comes to the oils, which is my field, uh, you're not. And we'll talk about that too. So people are getting highly misled, and I get very passionate about this because if you're
Yeah.
spending your money and your life is on the line, that's one thing. Like this, art, everything else, you get something, you don't like it, it doesn't quite work. I don't
Yeah.
really care too much about that, but this is your life here. So what I tell people is, if I'm wrong, I deserve to be shot. And you'll find very few people making a comment like that because they have the excuse, Serge, everybody's different, blah, blah. No,
Yeah.
no. We're much more alike than we are different. There's standard physiology, there's standard biochemistry. Um, you know, we're much more alike
Yeah.
than we are different. That's what everybody needs to know. We're not all different.
That's a really good point. I mean, our genes have been selected on a specific diet over the years. So, like you said, our biochemistry, our physiology, our genetics, our epigenetics are really similar. So let's start at the basic. We've been fighting this cancer disease for more than 4 decades, and billions of dollars have been spent. So, to you,
Yeah.
do you think we have the wrong definition or the wrong approach? And to you, what is cancer?
Absolutely. Well, I stand on the shoulders of the biggest genius of the 20th century. His name is Otto Warburg, MD, PhD, Nobel Prize winner. And he conclusively showed there's one cause of cancer. He called this the prime cause of cancer. There's hundreds of secondary causes of cancer. Lack of cellular oxygen. So when I saw this, I fell off the chair. Not oxygen in the bloodstream, because unless somebody has a disease, everybody, pulse oximeter, you go to the hospital, you put your finger in that. That's the thing where you have the clamp on your finger in the hospital room. For anybody that's been there, it's always 93 to above, and 100 is full oxygen saturation in the bloodstream. No one has a problem there. The question is, what would be impeding oxygen into the cell?
Yeah.
And there was actually tests done here in experiments in 1953 and 1955. They deprived heart tissue of oxygen over a 2-year period intermittently. 100% cancer with the tissue that was oxygen deprived. Then in 55, two people, Goldblatt and Cameron, brilliant experiment. They looked at people with fungal diseases, which means you have to have low oxygen because no spore germinates in high oxygen.
Yeah.
And they looked at people with this, and all those people had low oxygen. So it was confirmed, but nobody did anything with this. So I specialized in cellular oxygenation and figured out it had to be in the cell membrane. And what's in the cell membrane? Well, first we have 100 trillion cells. Every one of those have what's called a bilipid membrane. And 25 to 33% of every one of those 100 trillion cells are made of what's called parent essential oils. And there's only two. LA, that's linoleic acid, and parent omega 3 is ALA. LA is parent omega 6. And those two, all anybody needs to know is body can't make either one. If you don't get these from food and they're adulterated or processed, they won't work. They have to be fully functional. And the problem we have is on the omega 6 side, because all the cooking oils, all the oils fried in, baked with at your commercial supermarket have been highly processed to give long shelf life. Because if you didn't do that, you'd have bagels and rice smelling like fish that's gone bad. Nobody'd eat it. So walk by a fish market and you will typically have a smell. That's these oils going bad because fish oil, DHA, EPA, the big active components of fish oil, become rancid at room temperature. And that is the big problem. So DHA, EPA are what's called derivatives, meaning the body naturally makes those as needed in the quantities that are needed from the parents. And what we have today is everybody is overdosing on fish oil. It's called a supraphysiologic overdose, getting tons of DHA, EPA. Your body doesn't want this, and it takes the parent omega-6 and displaces it. So what you have is cell functions that don't work at all. The problem isn't the diseases are getting stronger today. We're getting weaker, and you specialize in this. And when people say, I want a strong immune system, no, your immune system is great. You want a proper functioning immune system.
Yeah.
A strong immune system is an autoimmune disease. It doesn't overload. This is like the cytokine storm in COVID viruses. Well, the omega-6 series put the throttle on that, so they stop inflammation naturally. And that's where I specialize. And over time, it just gets stronger and stronger and stronger. But everybody is getting misled. And there's nobody that specializes in EFAs and derivatives, which are called eicosanoids. They're the cell-by-cell messengers that do everything. But the mistake the medical profession made was they thought all parents would go to derivatives. So be easy on the body, give the body the derivatives like DHA, EPA. The problem is they didn't have the measurement tools necessary to know it's almost nothing that goes to these derivatives. It's about 0.1%. They thought it was closer to 30 or 40%. So you can imagine the overdose. The average person taking fish oil, for example, Serge, is getting 20 to 500 times overdose on a daily basis. And to put that into perspective, take 100 aspirin and call me in the morning. Don't do that, of course. I'm being facetious. You'll die. So just imagine an overdose of even 100-fold every day. Would you have a problem? And the answer is yes. And we're unknowingly doing it to ourselves. That's why I get so upset with these people, and they're killing people.
I mean, that was one of the data that was really controversial, is you are against fish oil. It's funny because in my field, and even in the medical field, they recommend fish oil to people with cardiovascular issues and so on.
There's no science. Let me make this very clear about why this stuff should work. What they always say is omega-6 is bad, arachidonic acid is bad, and fish oil displaces it, so it's good. Other than that, there is no metabolic pathway they can give you that is strong. Fish oil cannot help with the heart. And actually, for 20 years, all the studies showed it didn't do it. And this is what the problem is. It's political science, like you mentioned before. There's no real science anymore. The only measure of an academic today is how many publications you get. So if your name is on 300 publications and I'm on 3, you're 20 times better than I am. So publishing has become an end in itself. No one gives a damn if it's true or not. And it disgusts me. It absolutely disgusts me.
There's no more science done anymore. It's all about who funds what. It's all about money and get your grants renewed and so on. Right. That's why I got out of the academic system, because you couldn't really do what you wanted to do. So I have a question here from Connie. I don't know if you see it at the bottom. So she wants to know how you get oxygen to the cells.
That's an excellent question. It turns out you have oxygen going to hemoglobin. So it goes through the cell membrane. But Otto Warburg, and I say this right in the beginning of my book, the unexpected result wasn't about what passes in and out of the cell membrane, but the membrane itself. And it turns out in the cell membrane, the parent omega-6 component, which is 4-to-1 in most tissues, omega-6 more than omega-3. So everybody talks omega-3, omega-3, omega-3. Most foods have no omega-3 in it, and very few have a predominance of omega-3. For example, grass does, but nature doesn't want it. So if you look at a grass-fed cow, it will be 2-to-1 parent omega-6 to parent omega-3 in the tissues. So even with the cow eating this food that is heavily omega-3, the body doesn't want it. So it turns out the omega-6 in the cell membrane, the oxygen, can actually disassociate and go into the tissue. So the membrane itself takes that oxygen. It's not what's going in and out. In and out happens, but it also disassociates itself. It has the same curve as hemoglobin does. Nobody talks about this. Campbell did. Dr. Campbell in 1976 talking about cystic fibrosis. But other than that, this is never, ever talked about. It's only the oxygen going in and out. And what doctors will say is, oh, the cell membrane doesn't matter. The oxygen, small molecule, it goes in and out by itself. And I said, doctor, one question. What if the membrane was plastic? Would it go in and out? And they go, of course not. I said, well, that's what you're getting with processed omega-6. Now, people don't cook with omega-3. It's too reactive. Remember, it goes bad from the fish.
Yeah.
So nobody cooks, Serge, with flax oil, for example.
No, exactly.
3-to-1. Omega-3, that's one of the rare oils that has more omega-3 than omega-6 in it. Nobody cooks with that. So that is the key. Now, you also need the parent omega-3 for structure. So I look at two things with the parents. The cell membrane and muscle is 6.5-to-1. Omega-6 parent to omega-3 parent. Your body fat stores is 20-to-1. Parent omega-6 to parent omega-3. So everywhere in nature, we are loaded with the omega-6, but the food processors have ruined about half of it. So people are getting destroyed. And Otto Warburg showed decreased cellular oxygen, even intermittently over a long period of time, 35% by a third, cancer. It's spontaneous. You don't feel it. You don't know it. But that's the prime cause. Now, if you have asbestos, what does that do? It inflames. So if there's any chronic inflammation, that is using up your cellular oxygen. How is any disease taken care of? Oxygen. Ask any MD, oxygen, oxygen, oxygen. That's how you stop heart disease too. So heart disease and cancer are right next to each other. But it's a tragic state of affairs. You have people even saying avoid all vegetable oils. Well, how would you get the omega-6 then? Now you're going to get some from meat because it's in there. But the more you cook it, the higher the heat, you're going to what's called denature it. It's not going to work well. The reason why the food processors ruin the oil is that's a trans fat, hydrogenated oil. But there's other things they can do. Interesterified fats is the big thing now. Get rid of the trans fats, put this other man-made stuff, and humans wreck everything. You're not going to fool Mother Nature. And every time we try, you got the long shelf life. But nobody said, by the way, Serge, we're killing you. You better counteract that somehow. And that's the problem in a nutshell. But excellent question. The cell membrane itself, if it's fully functional omega-6 in there, transfers. The omega-3 series doesn't because the oxygen tension is different. It just doesn't do it. That's not its purpose. It's the omega-6. Nobody writes about this. Nobody talks about it. They don't know it. And there's very, very few, even in the pharmaceutical companies. I've talked to them. From Pfizer, I said, is there anybody that specializes in theoretical physiology and lipids like I do? He said, no, we only specialize in lipids in the bloodstream and how to get rid of them, like a statin. That gets rid of the good EFAs along with the bad ones. Because cholesterol molecule, the transport system of these EFAs is cholesterol. So if I lower cholesterol, I ruin the bad ones, but I also ruin the good ones. That's why the cholesterol number is meaningless. And by the way, there's no cholesterol sensor in the bloodstream. I've never heard anybody talk about that and focus on it. If it mattered, you'd have a sensor because you have one for insulin. Right now, unless we're diabetic, one part in 1,000, everybody's regulated the same. That's a 5 millimoles per deciliter, 70 to 90 milligrams. And by the way, that's less than a teaspoon of sugar in everybody's system. Nobody talks about that either. You have 5 quarts of blood, 1 teaspoon of oil or of sugar is in the whole system. The average American's eating 100. Would you expect there to be a problem? Yeah, you're supposed to be running on your own body fat. And that's why we have the oils and fats. There's 2 to 3 times more fat in the bloodstream to be burned as energy as there is sugar. And your brain doesn't run on sugar either. It's supposed to be running on your own body fat, but we're misled about that too. Now, it doesn't stop. There's almost nothing that's scientifically correct that's mentioned, but oxygen is key. And also in the mitochondria, the inner layer is called cardiolipin. That's 100% parent omega 6. So anybody saying you don't need omega 6, you are going to be lethargic and exhausted all the time. You're not going to be like this. 5 hours sleep, you should have this kind of energy. And it's not coffee, it's not hyped, it's natural energy from the oils. I mean, God doesn't make mistakes. That's what I tell people.
Yeah.
We are designed superbly.
Yeah.
Our mistake is butchering the fuel. It's like a Ferrari surge. It doesn't run right. Well, you can look at the timing, you can look at the ignition, you can look at the spark plugs, and they're all okay. And by the time you get to, did somebody put the wrong gasoline in the car? Yeah, they put diesel fuel in it. It's supposed to have super high octane regular fuel. That's why it doesn't run. We're the same thing. So we have the input is the food. You are the system. The output is your. And that's how I look at things. And
Yeah.
I've never been shown wrong in any of my research when it comes to lipids. And that's 25 years. Because before I open my mouth, I make sure it's correct 5 times over. Yeah. If this is true, then it would imply this and imply that. And that's what Otto Warburg did. Before he published anything, he would do the experiment 10 times. Today, most experiments cannot be repeated. So when they mouth off and write something in a medical journal, they've done it once, by sheer chance got the result they wanted, but nobody can reproduce it because they got the 1 in 20 results. And that's what they do with probability statistics. And I talk about that in other books, but most of the journal articles, they're not worth the paper they're printed on. It's a very, very sad state of affairs.
I mean, there's some doctor who look at how true the scientific papers are, and that somewhere 90% of them are wrong. And this is what I like about you is you provide the science. I mean, I was blown away by what you were saying in your book, but looking back and what I do with my clients, it makes a lot of sense. So there's some people who want to know what is the best, or what are the best sources of fat or oil, and how much a day in order to get this oxygen into your cells.
Good question. First thing is, in a grocery store, don't touch anything unless it's organic. If it's organic, it's not adulterated, it's not processed, so it's natural. The second thing is you want oils with much more omega-6. So for cooking, you can use olive oil for sauteing. You can use sunflower oil, which is all omega-6. The versions today, unfortunately, is for frying, and they've made the strains have a preponderance of what's called oleic acid, which is omega-9. So you hear people going, oh, the Mediterranean diet is great. They live on olive oil. Olive oil has virtually no parent omega-6 in it, no parent omega-3. So olive oil is not the best oil to get these. I tell people to get a supplement with more organic parent omega-6 than parent omega-3. But any of the cooking oils, number one is don't do anything that's going to harm you. Coconut oil, saturated fats are fine. You don't need to be slugging down coconut oil, eating it. It's 93% saturated fat, but it's wonderful to fry in, and because it doesn't go bad. It doesn't change its molecular stereochemistry is what it's called. And that's what you want. And what happened? Canada came in, get rid of your coconut oil, use our canola oil, which stands for Canada oil, by the way, and rapeseed oil, which is the way they used to get mustard gas. So you don't want processed oils or strains that aren't for humans. Soy oil is horrible too. Soy is food for a pig. I do a lot of lecturing in Iowa. And if you ever smelled the soy seed after it was ground up, you'd get sick to your stomach. So they have to process the living heck out of that. But soy is food for a pig. The women wouldn't buy it. Now they have soy milk, and they market to women because women care about our health, but they've been misled all over the place too. So I like a supplement because Dr. Land showed in 1990, the ratio in your cells is the ratio of what you're eating. Of course, we have a genetically based structure, but the food, the input is the big variable. Your body can't just burn up what it doesn't want to get the right ratios if you're overdosing by a factor of like 20 to 100, like with fish oil. So it tries to, but it can't. So it gets displaced in the parent omega 6, parent omega 3 gets displaced with the fish oil you're taking, for example. Or if you're overdosing on flax oil, you're going to have way too much omega 3 in the cells and they're not going to work right. You're also going to bruise. You can tell if you have too much omega 3. You walk into anything, you get smacked, you get a called hematoma. That's the medical term, but that's the black and blue mark. And you shouldn't be getting those. You should heal like this. If I cut my hand, I could take an X-Acto knife and go, it'll bleed like the dickens, and then it will start healing immediately. 2 days later, it's unbelievable. So we have surgeons following my recommendations for their patients, and the healing is just accelerated like you wouldn't believe. But excellent question. You know,
As a matter of fact, one of my first clients, she was diagnosed with this autoimmune skin disease. And it turned out, after reading your book, I figured out that it was an overdose of fish oil because the skin is mostly omega-6.
Yes, the essential EFAs. It's all omega-6. You raise an excellent question. So yeah. I've seen things going, I gave her fish oil and it worked. And I would lecture. And doctors would always go, well, we have some bad people with dermatologic issues, and the fish oil does work. Then a dermatologist emailed me and said, Brian, let me tell you why it works. It's acting like a long-term steroid. And you ask any MD, do you want to be on a steroid for life? They'll look like horror on their face because steroids block all EFA metabolism. You are going to die being on a long-term steroid, but it acts short-term, and your results are much better getting the parent oils in because your skin is all parent omega-6. Yeah. By the way, the inner lining of your artery, all parent omega-6. There's no fish oil in there. So when anybody goes, fish oil can make your heart better, give me the metabolic pathway. How? Yeah. It makes your skin softer. Give me the metabolic pathway. How? There's none in there. What is it, a puppeteer with, strings manipulating? The answer is no. So we're misled again, but very good diagnosis on your part, the fish oil. And it takes 18 weeks to start getting most of that fish oil out of the cells, by the way. There's been experiments with that so they can measure the cells. They use an animal, of course. And from that overdose of fish oil, it's 4.5 months just to get rid of that. You're not going to get the positive effects of the omega-6 parent and the omega-3 parent until you get rid of the negative effects of that fish oil. But fish oil, here's how bad it is. The #1 supplement in America. It is a poison in the dosages they're giving to people, and it's #1. It doesn't matter how many papers come out saying it doesn't work. And by the way, that is the preponderance of the medical journal articles. It doesn't work. They do have drugs that are based on it. One just came out. And the placebo, you'll love this. When it came out, I said, if there was any positive effect in heart disease and fish oil, the quote placebo they did was less of a poison than the fish oil. I said, tell me what the placebo was. A colleague of mine spent an entire day to get it. It was mineral oil. Mineral oil, you use the thin paint. It is toxic, and they were giving the people 4 grams a day. So all that showed is it's less of a poison than fish oil. Not that the fish oil is good for you. And the FDA approved it. What they did is they said, well, mineral oil doesn't interact with anything in the bloodstream. And it doesn't, but they didn't go, what's it do to the tissues? It destroys them because it gets shoved in there. So even the FDA missed that, unfortunately. They try, but they get misled by the pharmaceutical companies all over the place. So it's not their fault. The FDA really does try, but they're a function of the data The pharmacy companies give them. And the pharmacy companies are sued all the time.
Yeah.
$2 billion fine here, $5 billion fine there, black box warning. But that's all doctors have today is drugs. So if they took away the drugs, they'd have no treatment. Not
They
like
have
you.
nothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So besides bad fat that you consume from your diet, what are the factors that affect this oxygen transfer to the cells, the bilipid membranes?
That is the biggest one. It's all in the oils. The protein doesn't matter too much. I don't care how you get protein. Animal protein is more metabolically active than plant-based protein. So even Dr. Rowan, who co-wrote a book called PEO Solution, Parent Essential Oils, is a raw foods vegan. He said, Brian, as long as they do 80% regular and 20% raw foods, they're fine. But the more the food is unprocessed, the better. And the whole thing with meat, for example, it's not the meat, it's the steroids and hormones and additives they give
Yeah.
the cow that ruins it. It's not meat in of itself. And the proof of that is in the 1900s, meat and potatoes was the standard thing. Nobody was eating any fish at all, maybe once a week. The Catholics would do that or for Lent, but that was about it. There was no fish oil back then. That's a modern thing. There was very little fish eating.
Yeah.
So, but the oxygen transfer is all in the oils. That is 100% of the issue. I don't care what else you do. You're not going to solve that problem. You can't exercise it away. I don't care how you are in the gym. Proof of that is athletes get heart disease and cancer all the time. No better results than the average person not doing all this exercise. So to solve the oxygen problem, it's Warburg and it's all in the cell membrane, period. So if this isn't solved, no other therapy will be maximized. That's what I tell all the clinicians. You can have great interventions depending on the person. I look at doing 99%. So the 1% anomaly, I don't get into too much, but the 99% that are pretty good shape outside of the EFA deficiency because they've been misled will get fixed 100%. So heart disease reversal, for example, there's something called PGE1. That's the derivatives from the omega-6 side. PGE1 is called prostaglandin series 1. It's number one because it's the most important. That's the body's number one anti-inflammatory. So things like arthritis, that's how your body naturally takes care of that. It is also a vasodilator. So more blood flow to the lungs, to the brain. By the way, everybody listening, Alzheimer's is a cardiovascular disease. It's not beta amyloid. That's a result. What's happening is because the cell membrane is screwed up, the membranes in the brain are leaking. And the amyloid, which is protein, half of your cell membrane is fat. Out of that half fat, 25, 33% are the parent essential oils. The other half is protein. There's virtually no carbohydrate in the cell membrane structurally. There's a little embedded, but people telling you to live on carbohydrates are absolutely insane. Um, Raw food's a little different because it's not the glycemic ones and they're not cooking. So, for example, pasta is not a raw foods vegan food. They're
No.
eating a lot of vegetables. So, vegetables are mainly water. You can do it, but it's a tough one. I mean, you need to be a real specialist in this stuff.
So what is the diet that you would recommend for people to maximize this?
You don't need a lot of fats in the diet. They just have to be the right ones. So the easy way, I tell people, you can get a supplement. And I consult with a lot of supplement companies. I don't give any specific one. All I tell them is the easiest way is a supplement with all the food processing. So you can just take the oils once a day. Most of them have it in capsules. And all you need is less than a teaspoon a day. That's how powerful these parents are. Now, I do like having a supplement that has GLA in it. That's the first derivative. So there's something called the delta 6 desaturase pathway, and that's how you get PGE1. But if you're diabetic, you have diseases, you're drinking a lot, that will be impaired. It's not impaired to zero, but if you have any kind of medical problem, you want to be at 100%. So I like having the GLA because it bypasses that pathway.
Yeah.
While the PGE1 made, and then that's a derivative, and then longer down the line is what's called arachidonic acid, and that makes PGI2, which is called prostacyclin. That makes it where the blood platelets can't stick together, they can't stick to an artery wall. So I don't know how you would get a heart attack. And Dr. Weiss in Germany in 1981 showed the parent omega 6 PGE1 derivative reversed arterial occlusion. So if you have a clot in that artery, it gets dissolved. And if you're wondering what clogs an artery, most doctors will go, it's cholesterol. No, it isn't. It's the adulterated omega 6. It's
Yeah.
85% ruined omega 6 from the cooking and the baking and the processing. That's it. The cholesterol just tries to fix it. And of course, it can't do it. But remember, cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, is the transporter of the oils, but it's all the omega 6s what's clogged. So I would tell people eat, reasonable protein. Don't worry about the saturated fat, like steak has natural fat in it. You want to eat some cheese, you want butter. Just make sure they're organic, because if they're not, that is where all the residues go in the bodies of humans and animals. It goes to your fat stores, is where the pesticides, the steroids, all the residues get stored. This is why when somebody starts dieting, all these poisons come out, because you start running on your own body fat. And that's why I tell people to take a detoxifier every day too. It's called EFAs. So that gets rid of the negatives, but the oils bring in the positives. Now, salads are okay. Lettuce, it's about 93% water. So I tell people eating a lot of salad, you're on a water diet. It fills you up and they're fine. So lettuce is great, cucumber's great, peppers are okay, onions are okay. And you can have a big salad every day. It's beautiful for staying in shape, and it fills you up too. And for the sweet tooth, I like a protein powder fruit smoothie. You put the protein powder in to make it like a milkshake, but fruit does have natural sugars. It's nature's candy, and you don't want anything dehydrated. If you start dehydrating fruit like raisins, they're
Yeah.
horrible. Remember, you have less than a teaspoon of blood, less than a teaspoon of sugar in the bloodstream. Well, if
Yeah.
you eat raisins, the average American's eating 100 teaspoons. All that extra sugar, the 99 teaspoons, go to body fat. So anybody recommending a high carbohydrate diet understands no biochemistry or human physiology. It's a tragic state of affairs. I don't know how anybody could do that if they knew this, but they don't know it.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know. I spoke for myself. I speak for myself because I didn't know. And as I started researching your book and the science of your book, I was blown away. And I try to tell people that I don't use fish oil with people anymore. Like you said, I use flaxseed, safflower, sunflower, stuff like that, which makes a lot of sense. So we have a question from Mr. Simon. Let me go back to the question. We didn't talk about pH today, but can you briefly answer his question?
Yeah, good question. Baking soda and pH. The answer is, and there's people that say this, the answer is absolutely not. It is worthless. Your body has automatic blood buffering. 735 to 745 is the acidity of the blood, which is pretty close to zero. 7 is zero. 7 is water if you measure the pH.
Yeah.
You can't vary this if you wanted to. The only reason your pH in the blood will be wrong is because you have something like cancer and lactic acid comes out. So that makes the blood very acidic. But in the urine, the kidneys are how that's taken care of. So regardless of what you eat, the kidneys dump it and make it where it's perfectly balanced. And the EFAs are also blood buffers. So are proteins from that piece of steak you ate. But baking soda, it will do absolutely nothing into the bloodstream. It's a good guess. It's a good try. I've had doctors that try it. Even they said, no, it doesn't do anything. But it can't, because the body won't let you vary that pH. If it did, we'd be dead. So nature isn't going to allow us to butcher that? Good question.
Yeah, and I would piggyback on that. I had one of my clients, he was really obsessed with pH, and he
Yeah,
wanted to get his urine pH to about 9.
that's
And
all
he
over
would
the place. Yeah, yeah. It doesn't.
crazy, and actually started having kidney problems. Ridiculous. I mean, the work of Otto Warburg clearly shows that pH is a side effect of a disruption of the
Yes.
metabolic function of the
Side effect.
mitochondria.
Hit it right in the head.
So pH doesn't cause cancer; it's a
No.
symptoms.
Yes. Absolutely right.
Because a lot of people get confused. They go on this alkaline diet to try to reverse cancer. That's not what's going on. You need to
There's
fix the
water
mitochondria.
companies that are doing alkaline water, and I
Yes,
read a great paper on it. It's horrible.
it's horrible.
Years ago, I threw the paper away. I should have kept the damn thing, but I didn't. I can't tell you exactly why it was so horrible, but this guy just tore that apart. People are killing themselves with alkaline water. You do not want it.
I mean, I tried years ago. I bought one of those machines that was one of those companies. And
Yeah.
when I read the instruction manual, it clearly said in it, if you have kidney problems, do not drink the water.
Wow.
And I didn't have kidney problems, but after a couple of years, I started to have kidney problems. And it was that water. It was 9.5. It was way too alkaline for my body. It's crazy, crazy.
Well, people are all desperate for a solution. And if something sounds reasonable, you don't know. There's no way you can know this.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
not intuitive. How would you know what your blood pH is? You wouldn't. How would you know you can't change it? You're not measuring your blood for pH. I mean, you could, but who the heck is going to be doing that?
Exactly.
Now, for an upset stomach, I see what's coming on the screen. That's very different. I didn't say it's good for nothing. Baking soda is good for a lot of things, but for cancer, it's worthless. For the upset stomach, sure.
Yeah. Good. So this is it. It's been almost an hour. So what would you say? What would be your last word to the listeners?
Don't get any unprocessed oils. Make sure they're organic. You can get them either in the grocery store or definitely at the health store. You want more omega-6 and omega-3. If anybody has any question about this stuff, they can look at my website. It's just my name, real simple. Nothing is sold there. I just give you the science. So it's Brian, B as in boy, RIAN, P as in parent, ESKIN.com. Tons of papers, tons of videos, and you can decide, if this makes sense to you and you like it, what to get. And it gives you the ratios in there. If they want supplements, you can certainly send me an email. After you look at the website, and I'll tell you what I do. But by law, I don't give FDA law because supplements and diseases are a big no-no. So I just tell people the ratios they need. But you can see all this stuff on my website. And don't take any fish oil. Those are the two things: organic cooking oils and no fish oil. It is a poison. We're not fish. By the way, what is fish oil? It's antifreeze for a fish. 40 degrees, the fish would turn into a block of ice. It's only two ways natures can go. It can give it alcohol. Like if I take vodka and throw it in the freezer, it doesn't freeze. So it has a very, very high or low freezing point. It just won't do it. But you have a drunk fish or what's called the long chain fatty acids, which are the oils, and they don't freeze either. And that makes it where it's not a drunk fish. But my question to you is, are you living in 40-degree water? No, we're at 98.6. I just told you before, fish oil goes rancid at room temp. 72 degrees, it goes rancid. Just imagine what it's doing in your body. It's going 5 times more rancid because it's not linear. It just explodes. And then all your antioxidants in your brain and everywhere else are going to your bloodstream to try and fix this fish oil problem. Alzheimer's. Things oxidize, and now you don't have enough antioxidants where they're supposed to be. But people can check out my website if they care about diet and diabetes. I have a book called The 24-Hour Diet doctors asked me to write. PEO solution is there too. And if they want cancer, of course, Hidden Story of Cancer. That's sold 40,000 books. 7,000, it was translated into Dutch, by the way. 7,000 hard copies were sold in the Netherlands, if you can believe that. Very small country, the size of Rhode Island. They really care about being healthy.
Amazing, amazing. You guys go check his website. It has so much science, and it is controversial, but it makes a lot of sense. And I do see it with my clients. So clinically, the science that you provide to us makes sense. And this is what we need from scientists. We need what makes sense and what works in people's body.
Yeah. My
Good.
pleasure.
Thank you.
My results with you are what counts, but I can explain why it works. So you're exactly right.
You're going to have to be back on the show. I had tons of questions today. It's really a really exciting topic, actually. So thank you, Professor Brian, for your time. We'll talk to you soon, okay?
Thanks again.
Thank
Bye.
you.